You already popped out, motherfucker. Surprise, motherfucker. All rise. Also, I put a light back there, as you can see, and then I changed my lighting up here. Do I need to change my lighting anymore? Do I need to adjust it? I guess that's my question.
So the light back there is blowing out your camera pretty hard, actually, because you can see how it's just a solid white blob in the back.
Yeah.
It looks like you had a fun time. Oh, damn. That wasn't important.
And that's why I got this stand right here. Okay, I'm ready. Clink, clank. Did everybody have your drinks? You have your drinks?
Clink.
You boot black tar heroin. Clink, clank.
Clink, clank. Clink, clank.
Clink, clank, clunk. Hello, and
hopefully
welcome
one
to
day
Strange
you can
Happy
get the
Hour.
sound bit in there instead of us having to say clink clank. That would be great.
No, I like the clink, clank. The sound bit's for the bell. That's what we need.
Yeah,
but anyways,
hello. I gotta get Bellboy on it.
Bellboy, welcome to Strange Happy Hour. I am one of your hosts, Brent the Jesterhead Metcalfe, with my new mic. I'm very excited about it. Wah, 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 wah. Along to my left.
The dispatcher, Mark Plover.
And I'm all right.
Handsome John.
I couldn't remember where I went last week, so we just went left this
We've
week.
been going in the same direction for like
you
3
went
weeks.
left last week, yeah. This is third week in a row I've gone first now.
If only somebody could hold me accountable for it. Of course, this is the weekly podcast where we talk to you about our nerdy video game news, along with the very cool tech news that has happened along with the week. But we don't have time to discuss everything that happens. We don't have time to talk about the fact that PlayStation is going to be releasing a new branding with PlayStation 5 for the studios. It's almost like Marvel's trailer, which makes me laugh quite a bit for when they're opening, when it's just the Marvel Studios. Check it out. We don't have time to talk about Steam working on a loyalty system where it gives users discount, and we definitely don't have time to talk about every game show to the Xbox 2020 this past week. However, we do have time to discuss something that's less disappointing, what we on this very show like to call each and every week when we get together on this very show, the important.
The important.
I really like Mark was like dusting himself off in the midst of that. We're actually going to throw it to the dispatcher himself first so he can dust his shoulder off some more and talk to us about some tech specs. What's going on with the AMD Ryzen 3300X?
So, AMD released a new processor. Anyway, they've been on this Ryzen 3000 series chip train for a little while now, and we've been on this 7 nanometer tech, finally in desktop processors and running PCI Express 4.0 and all the new gadgets and gadgets and lower power specs and high performance clock speeds and all that stuff, which has been nice. Now, I personally enjoy the high end of chips, so that's where I stay. So I don't normally check this kind of thing, but this is something that really kind of caught my eye just because of the price point and the performance gain that you really get out of this kind of thing. So AMD released 2 chips as part of the Ryzen 3000 series, the Ryzen 3 3100 and the 3300X. Now, the 3300X is brand new, unlike the 3100. 3100, I believe, has been out for a little bit longer now. But the basic point here, anyway, the specs, anyway, are actually pretty comparable, anyway, to older chips. So to put this in perspective, the older processor that I've got sitting to my left here, actually in my secondary computer is running a i7 4700K, which runs at about 3.2 to 3.5 gigahertz with 4 cores and 8 threads. So it's 4 physical cores and 8 virtualized cores, basically. And these 2 chips, the 3100, comes with 4 cores, 8 threads at 3.6 gigahertz. Not bad. The 4700K for its generation was a flagship top-tier processor. Now, granted, this is a long time ago by comparison. Even then, the 7700K, which is only a couple generations old, isn't that much better than the 4700K by performance comparison. The 3300X is 3.8 gigahertz, with turboed up to 4.3, running 4 cores, 8 threads as well. The big benefit here is the 4700K, the 7700K, the 9700K, the 10700K when that comes out. All of those generally have a release price anywhere between $300 and $500. Mm-hmm. The 3300X and the 3100 are $120 and $99 respectively.
Yeah, and there's actually a really nice chart you have in this Forbes article in the description floating above me, like a cloud that's angry. That's below. It doesn't matter. Go ahead. Yeah, it has a good comparison where you can see these specs you're discussing on top of the actual price point, and that is impressive as hell.
Right. So you still get all the performance benefits. You still get all the temperature benefits, the power, the lower power draw benefits, because it's a 65 watt TDP on this chip at max load, which is impressive in and of itself. I'm running the 3900X, which you can see is the second one on this chart, and I have 105 watt TDP. Granted, I have much higher performance spec, but 65 watts is very low power. It's a very cheap price for very comparable hardware for what it is. So the 4700K processor, the 7700K running specs that are comparable to this are very relevant still today when it comes to gaming. You can still run high spec games. Save your money on your processor. Don't spend $500, $700 on a top tier processor from AMD or Intel. Spend $100 on a baseline processor from AMD. Save that money or spend that money elsewhere into a better graphics card, and you're going to have better gaming performance out of it than you ever would out of getting a better processor in the first place. Gaming's all about the graphics card more so than it is the processor. Don't get me wrong, it does matter, but these kind of specs at this price point, your price to dollar, your frame to dollar difference here is absurd.
How are they able to do it for so cheap comparatively, unless the markup was just that significant?
I really can't tell you offhand. It's based on the chip architecture.
It just seems like they're missing out on profit here. Why would you're being overly competitive? It seems like being
so the way that the
30% of the total
processor
cost.
So the way that the processor manufacturer setup sort of works is, and this is the way it's been done for a long time. Actually, even back to the if you can remember, some of the Core 2 Duo stuff. Anyway, it goes back even beyond that. And the idea is that chip manufacturers, because the precision of manufacturing very small transistor-sized chips, is becoming it becomes more and more uncertain, or more and more fluctuating anyway as you produce chips. So whenever you start to produce the chips from these dies that you've got that literally burn or burn down the silicone that you've got on the chip, or you're embedding into the chip, some chips turn out better than others because, let's say that the light bounced, or there was a piece of dust that flew across the light that burns the silicone down, or something like that. That molds it a little bit and makes either cores unusable or makes it a little bit more unstable, for example. What they'll do is they'll reduce the performance of some of those higher end chips and then rebrand them as a lower end chip that's just restricted via software or firmware, and rebrand it as a lower end chip. So you can still overclock that lower end chip. You're just not going to get as great a performance result as you would out of buying a high end chip, which already has the overclock that you're trying to get, for example. And you could even overclock that further, basically. It's within a certain tolerance level, and you basically make a tolerance level and then define that as a product SKU. If it works better, then you define a new product SKU and you open up the performance range a little bit more, and then you have a new product SKU, basically. It's a process called binning, basically.
Okay. Cool.
It is pretty. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. But no, the idea here basically is it looks like the 3100 and the 3300X are two different types of binned processors that just have different performance specs to them. The 3300X having a bit of a different architecture than 3100, which actually means that the $20 price difference on the 3300X instantly makes it more worth it. The big graphic there that would do that anyways, I guess the first major graphic underneath the table there that says optimizing the 3300X beyond frequency, where you see the CCXs are built into the CCDs, the dies. So the CCXs have to have communication between them for the cores to manage each other, the clock speeds and all that stuff. With the 3300X, it has all 8 threads, or all 4 cores, as opposed to being split up like the 3100 does. They're all on one location, so the communication between them isn't as prevalent as it would, with the inherent per clock cycle latency that would happen on the 3100. So that immediately gives it a small performance benefit, which astronomically makes it more worth it for the $20 price difference. But this price by in and of itself, like first off, the 3300X is far more worth it than the 3100 just on a performance scale. But the price point of $120 for a processor is going to shove AMD through the roof as far as, you know, like its purchase sale or its number of sales for the cheaper market, because I didn't realize this either, that there is such a market for budget gaming like that.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, like it's a little, like it's not generally what I go for. Like I would rather save the money, I guess, and go for the higher tier. But I get guys who maybe don't have the money offhand and want to build a gaming PC to be able to, you know, play a game or to play with their friends or whatever it is, that kind of thing. And this fits that niche perfectly.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, and I think they also did a fairly smart job with their price point, because the difference between 99 and 120 is arguably not that much. You're $21.
Right.
And
it's almost tax.
Yeah, you're basically pushing a majority of people up to that higher product and that higher price point, but there's still a market space, like you're saying, for the budget gamer who is really concerned that $21 could go towards, you know, whatever else they need for the actual system. So it is fascinating, honestly.
Not only that, but like looking at the specs for the 3300, like the 3300X, it's actually very comparable to the higher end stuff, even not overclocked. So that they're actually getting a pretty good deal off of that, which I totally agree with you. Going with that and throwing the money elsewhere into your build would be much better off.
Well, so the big benefit there, and the reason you're seeing that is like clock speed for the most part should relatively stay the same, that kind of thing, until you start stepping down into like laptop processors and all that stuff where you need to underclock them to do better, go for better battery and cooling performance, that kind of thing. Once you get into a desktop grade, cooling performance and power usage aren't really a major thing that you really think about. So clock speed can relatively stay the same, but you notice the core and thread count increases drastically. So that means AMD is building their processors in a way not quite like Intel does, where Intel will actually restrict clock speeds as you get into the lower tier processors. Versus, like, so the idea is that your bottom tier chips can actually be great for gaming performance on a budget level, but then your high tier chips are where people buy them for workstation use or video production or whatever, you know, that kind of thing. Like you buy them for 3D modeling, you know, things that are better optimized for multi-core performance, people who actually need that stuff. But if you bring gaming into the, you know, somebody can build an entire desktop PC for $500 or $300 without peripherals, or well, actually I wouldn't say 300, I'd say 400, that kind of thing, or 300 with used parts, for example.
Yeah,
that makes it so much more attainable for a lot of people.
Oh, agreed entirely. And again, you're hitting a sweet spot where you're able to get that market space, but you're not sacrificing performance. I mean, the performance is actually super nice on this. So yeah, I'm with you 100%.
Yeah, I think this will turn a lot more people towards AMD, which I'm super proud of, because having just recently switched to Team Red, like having been Team Blue for, I don't know, what was it, 2012, I think is when I switched, 2013, something like that is when I changed processors from AMD back to, or over to Intel, that kind of thing. And now I'm back at AMD again because I really like what they're doing. I want to see it keep going. So
Sony and Xbox must like it too.
I think AMD is the only one who wins in this scenario. So,
yeah, no kidding.
All I'm saying, Mark, is that this isn't Iron Man versus Captain America. Okay, Team Red, Team Blue.
I mean, Iron Man. Honestly, I'd rather be Iron Man. Just so I get to fly around.
Just be Iron Man.
Yeah,
I'd rather beat Iron Man with a fist.
I don't think you can.
That's just rude. Why would you do that?
Why would I not?
Jarvis would not let you.
Jarvis is dead.
No, he's not.
Jarvis. Wow. Long live Jarvis. Please let us know what you think about these processors and whether or not this is actually something interesting to you. I find it fascinating from the economic standpoint.
Agreed.
And honestly, as these types of innovations continue to appear in PC gaming, I think it becomes a much more affordable and easier medium to permeate. I think over the past, I would argue past 5 years, with the help of YouTube and honestly celebrities like Terry Crews going and building his own gaming PC to play Minecraft with his kids or whatever. Like, this has helped move a lot of people in this direction. And I know it's kind of painful to hear that's the case, but it's true. Like, it's becoming less of a mystery and more of a, no, you can do this too. It's almost it's on the same level of like building your own motorcycle, building your own car, but less complex. Like this is now attainable, and as the price point continues to drop, but the actual power stays, it's much easier for people to want to be see
I think it's funny. You think it's more complex to rebuild the car. I think it's the other way around.
Well, there you go.
You can build a PC in a couple hours. I'd like to see you build an entire car in a couple hours.
What he said.
Hold on. It's not a competition. I'm just saying, like, when I think about it, I would be like, I feel like the car would be easier than building for a PC. Like, just thinking about, well, this will work with this and not with this, and a lot of thought process going into it. So you have to add in the logic time.
Yeah,
It's definitely a competition. Please let us know what you think in the comments floating above John's head, like what is that? The laurel crown they give you in the Olympics, right? That's what we're looking at. All right.
I was trying to give you a shot of it, but it didn't work out well.
Moving on.
Jesus,
Speaking of the laurel crown, so we're gonna move it on to the cameraman, John, handsome John, to talk to us about the future of gaming.
Well,
what exactly?
Exactly. That's kind of my question. News is super scarce, believe it or not, this week. So I wanted to really talk about what we're excited about coming for the future for both PC and consoles and handhelds as well, as they still do exist. I consider Switch to be a handheld console. Whatever.
Yeah, I do not disagree with you whatsoever.
I think I have yet to actually dock it. No, I have. I did once just to see if I could play a game with doing it. It was not great. But
that's my favorite part. You're just like, can I play the Switch on the big TV?
Nope.
It's fine.
And the funniest part is that I just wanted to play a Pokemon to play on the big screen. I thought that was going to be the coolest thing in the world. No one cared at all. That was
not even a little bit.
It was great. It actually was one of the better of the letdowns. What are you looking forward to coming up with technology? What do you want out of this technology? Because everybody's got a lot of hype on ray tracing, which I've seen a lot of people come out and do a lot of comparisons with pictures showing, hey, this is a PlayStation 4 game and without ray tracing, and this is with ray tracing. Mm-hmm. And honestly, in some cases, it looked better without it.
I was gonna say, if you want the most drastic implementation of it, look at Minecraft.
Yeah.
NVIDIA just released the Minecraft beta. Look at the Minecraft beta for ray tracing. It's the most drastic one by far.
That's a very good point.
And not only that, but like looking at Uncharted 4, like everything in that game was so done with such detail and beautiful that like you couldn't add anything to it. And I think a lot of people are saying that they're glorifying the ray tracing part. But just to get to the actual point, like, what are you excited for? Like, me personally, I'm excited for shorter load times. We have had a lot of issues with Division 2, for instance, just having incredible load times. So every time we fast travel, go between New York and D.C., I mean, I put in 13 days worth of time into that game. But if you account for how much time was probably put in for travel, it was probably a whole day's worth cumulative. That's how bad I feel it is in some cases. Because I'll be like, all right, I'm going to go take a poop. I'll be right back. And Brent knows my poops aren't short. So
It's true.
I'll be really looking forward to seeing what they did with Spider-Man, where the load time was brought down to nothing. That is something important to me because I feel like I can get more done in my short amount of time that I have to play games. You know, you get done with your yard work when you get home or your responsibilities with your kids. You don't necessarily have a whole lot of time to wait on your game to load. I'm also looking forward to, better graphics, of course. I am kind of a graphics whore. So it doesn't really matter between PC, Xbox, PlayStation 5. I'm excited for the beautiful things that I can see people doing. I think Valhalla is going to look great, even though people are saying, 30 frame rate. I'm like, whatever. I still think it's going to look good. But I'm also really curious to see what people could do with stuff like Dreams. Because right now, people are making things with Dreams that look real already. How do you make it look more real? I just want to find out. That plate of eggs and sausage and mash, it just looks so good.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think the load time's a big one for me, and the load time is not just for like in-game stuff. I mean, yes, it's for in-game, but I don't mean it in the sense of like what you're talking about, right? Like the fast travel in Division. I'm super excited for that to go down. Don't get me wrong. But what I'm more excited about is the capability of jumping in and out of a game on my whim. Like that is something that I never realized how much I appreciate and enjoy.
For someone who has ADD, I totally agree.
I do it so much, but the hindrance is definitely, well, how long do I want to wait? How long do I wait to go into this thing? A great example is I was playing Final Fantasy VII Remake the other day, and I was enjoying the hell out of it, but I was kind of done with where I was. I was like, all right, cool. I can save anywhere, but if I don't get to this completion point, then it's going to be longer. And what do I want to play after that? Well, I want to play Division, but like it takes like 5 minutes to load up the game, not even counting like the actual game portion of it.
You have to turn on the game. It gets to the main screen. Then you get to your character loadout. Then you have to load the game into the server.
To be fair to Division, none of your save data it's all in the server. It's not on the system itself. Yeah. So there's a connection and all that. But, it's frustrating. It's frustrating. So the ability to just hop into any game that I own and play it whenever I want, that is something I really want. I want it on every device I have. The other night I was playing Switch and I needed to leave Final Fantasy 12 and I was like, oh my God, I have to get to the save point. Once I get to the save point, then I have to load up this next game.
For instance, I'll be playing, I was playing Detroit Become Human and I was working on my Platinum and I'm waiting on everybody else to show up for Division. It would have been great just to suspend the game and start playing Division, and then after it's all said and done, I can go right back into Division, not having to save, not having to stop, not having to wait for this checkpoint thing as you were talking about. That would be absolutely phenomenal, especially if you're a multitasker or a platinum hunter. That is something that would be very advantageous for you.
Absolutely. I think that, and then there's a lot of things that are interesting about next gen. Audio's been touted a lot. You're talking about ray tracing and then the graphics. All that's going to be super exciting, but I really want to see what they can do with VR.
Yes.
As someone who super excited about VR, it was just announced today by Sony. Iron Man VR has a July 3rd release date, which is hilarious to me because Captain America's game would come out on July 4th. Come on. We all know that's true.
That's great.
But still excited, very excited about that game. Will I have time to play it? I don't know. It depends on how much Last of Us Part 2 I play.
It would be just like Tony Stark, just to snub him and be like, I'm going to come up first.
Right before you.
Well, not only that,
Tony Stark-esque thing to do.
I'm actually really, Xbox did it first with their rumble and their triggers. They spent so much money on that. It was a little insane for the payoff. But I am extremely curious to how well the haptic feedback system is going to be on the PS5 controller.
I was going to bring that up after I was done talking about VR.
Ooh, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. But that to me, especially with Horizon Zero Dawn coming out, is going to be phenomenal. I hope that it is the immersion is going to be great. But
that's the example they used, right? I mean, they're talking about, hey, if you hold down the trigger, it's going to feel like you pulling taut a bowstring. And I want to feel, I'm with you 100%. Like the dual sense, right? That's what it's called. The dual sense. Super weird. But seeing how they use that technology, there's multiple implications here because Sony is trying to do it in a way that hasn't been done before, supposedly. Two, what does that mean for the second party? You were talking about Mad Catz, which I don't think exists anymore, but other companies like that, they make they make knockoff controllers all the time. How are you going to do that for PlayStation 5? Is this Sony's weird way of preventing that from happening? So you have to buy a DualSense to play a PS5?
I don't think so. It's just going to be for the immersion. I don't think it's actually going to be anything kind of like a touchpad. I don't think it's going to be anything like that where it's required for you to play with it. You know what I mean?
Well, it'll be, I think it's going to, I believe it's going to have a much larger impact than we think so now if it's done well. Because again, if you're talking about when I pull a trigger, I feel like I'm pulling the trigger of a gun. Obviously not the same degree. There's no gunpowder. It's not.
No, but it would be cool as if you're pulling the trigger and all of a sudden it releases, goes, You know, like that is going to be
has a
freaking
kick
cool.
point basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Well, and you can feel the difference between firing a sniper rifle compared to a shotgun compared to a submachine gun, like all because they feel different in real life, and so having that capability would be incredible.
They feel different mostly on your shoulder than your finger, but yes.
Well,
you know what I'm saying.
But my interesting part about that, I guess, is not like if the capabilities there, that's cool, but the game developers still have to implement it, of course, and do it correctly.
Yeah.
And I think that has huge implications for non-first party games. Now, it's
Call of
not.
Duty.
Yeah, exactly. Like the big games we're talking about. Call of Duty, Division, we were just talking about. Assassin's Creed Valhalla already announced it's coming to PS5. Like, do you feel the difference when you swing that axe and it hits and makes contact on a DualSense compared to a DualShock 4? Like, will we get to feel that? Because that would be incredible if it's the case.
How do you feel about the microphone in the controller?
I think it's fantastic. That is such a smart move.
I think it depends on the quality of the microphone, and we'll find that out soon.
Yeah, well, and noise canceling too, because if you're in any kind of space where there's other noise going on around you, then that's going to become kind of nightmarish.
There's got to be, because the game's going to be making noise. It has to have noise canceling.
Not just the game, you clicking. Buttons.
It's going to be like inside of it, acoustically, just annoying everyone.
I'm just
I
saying.
agree with.
When some kid rage quits, I really don't want to hear the sound of his controller smacking.
No, you want to hear that. You'd be like, that's right, did you break it? Yeah, boy.
I still think it's a smart move because, and I cannot count on the two hands I have here, how many times, John, we have joined a party where I've joined you or been invited to a party or whatever, and like, oh shit, I don't have the microphone ready. And just that immediate, hey, give me a second, or better yet, like in Division. And Division has location-based sound. So if you're close to a person, you can hear them.
Yeah.
So just having it built in where somebody, like, you may not be like having your mic on, but you can hear other people talking, and they're like, hey, do you want to go do something? You could turn the mic on real quickly.
You could do
like,
something where you could have to play a game where you talk into the mic, but you could whisper.
Yes.
You have to be close to that person in the game. You can whisper to them, be like, you have to trust me, okay? We have to kill him. And it could be like this whole trust game, like Werewolf, and you could go up to people and have like private conversations. It would be great. But it also worries me that I hope that they put a fast mute button on that, because if not, it's going to be cumbersome.
There's got to be a way to quickly mute it on and off. And looking at the buttons, that doesn't seem the case.
The easiest way would be a switch like underneath the bottom of the controller or something like that.
That's true.
Like, that's the easy way to do it. But like, they've got to implement something like that too, because I'd imagine a lot of people are going to get kind of sketched out. Like, yeah, you're going to be listening to everything I say and do every time I play a game. I don't know.
You're going to hear me fapping on my PlayStation. Also the rumor of the was it a rumor, or is it confirmed that was PlayStation's new VR console coming out with a controller that was sensing the fingers?
So it's not a rumor or confirmation. The Sony research division, or the I don't know if it was Sony
Umbrella
or PlayStation.
Corporation.
Yes. Their research division showcased that they have a controller that looks at finger movement, similar to the Index.
Okay.
So
obviously they're looking into improving the VR, which is honestly, to me, huge. The one thing I really do want from them is a new set of hands, because the freaking ball controller thing is just god-awfully annoying for some of these games.
The move is awful, and it's literally holding them back from getting new games. Like Valve released the Half-Life game, Half-Life Alyx. Half-Life Alyx is apparently an incredible VR game, but it requires the Index because it uses your hand movement. You pick up a clip, you load the gun, and you can do that with the moves, but it breaks the immersion if you don't have every level of it, and that's what makes that game interesting. It's not that. It's a similar argument that people make where you can make a mod for that game and play it outside of VR, but it doesn't work because the VR immersion of it, where you feel like you're picking up an actual clip, when you feel the vibration as you rack the gun, that all matters. And I think it's going to be necessary for the future. I really hope I really hope that they go the route of the Quest, in which the Oculus Quest, where it can be wireless.
Yes.
Like, I don't think they will because of the fact
Price
that
point.
the processing power. Because the Quest is actually cheaper than the regular Oculus.
Right.
I think it's like $350 or something like that.
Oh,
because it has its own.
But the PSVR is the cheapest out of all of them.
The PSVR is the cheapest out of all of them currently. And in order to utilize the power of your PS5, you're going to need a wire. Like, you just can't transmit that shit over fucking Bluetooth or Wi-Fi or whatever the hell you want to try. Like, it just won't work. So,
Well, I mean, even if they came up with a different system that was a lot less, even if it was a transmitter that you had to charge, and I had to have a battery pack or something that attached to a belt, I would be okay with that if I could move freely without having to worry about where the cord was going around my neck and
so actually,
stepping on it.
That's actually kind of funny. If you guys want to look back, or if anybody, if you guys want to look back at a Linus Tech Tips video, they did a completely wireless VR setup where they got a beefy MSI laptop, crammed it in a backpack, took all the VR components, crammed it in the backpack, and it was a true wireless, like standalone in a VR room system, basically. Like, they got
incredible.
some USB wireless transmitters, because at the time they were using the Vive, I think, or the Rift, one or the other. So they still had the station units, but they had wireless USB transmitters to get out to it. I think that would be kind of neat if the headsets, even if it has a battery pack like you're talking about, John, or a pack that you put on your hip, and it just connects to the remote systems, but then still has like the index things of like the cameras that are still looking around.
we can do this with the PS4. I'm not joking. Like, we can literally, because you can make an attachment to hold the camera out in front of you
Yeah.
long enough, and you could do everything in the backpack like you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, we could set it up and do that. Should actually probably get together after, we won't die if we talk to each other within 6 weeks.
Correct. Yeah. That'd be fun. No, I mean, I think VR is definitely, like, the controller, I'm super excited about. Load time, super excited about. Graphics and sound are always going to be better. I, like, just figuring out how they utilize sound from a musical standpoint has me excited, because I listen to more video game soundtracks than I ever have in my life. So all of that sounds great. I'm very excited.
I mean, I'm actually really excited for how the sound travels within the game as well. It's supposed to help with immersion. I forgot what it was called. God, what do they call it?
It's also using ray tracing. It's 3D audio that's using ray
3D
tracing.
audio. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
It uses the same ray tracing tech that would normally project light to determine how sound would bounce off of surfaces and whatnot.
Which is super exciting.
Which a game like The Last of Us would be super important and probably ultra immersive.
Listen, we don't need to get more immersive than The Last of Us Part 1, because I can tell you right now, it's creepy as f***.
It is.
You're like, where's the clicker? Where is it?
And then it's a bloater.
I'm so excited for Part 2. I'm so terrified for Part 2.
It's funny because I really feel like, they focused really hard on the human-to-human aspect of that game. And the clickers, I think, are going to be like this momentary stuff going on, but it's going to be mainly humans that you're interacting with. So
It's Walking Dead season 3 and 4. Like, the zombies are around and they matter, but they're just like
they're for the pop-in scares. They're for the all right. We need a break from the drama.
Well, it's other natural aspects, right? So it's like when there's a wolf out in the woods and you're doing something, like it's all about the human aspect, because let's face it, we're all basic creatures, and we will just listen
We're
to
a
Alex
lot more
Jones talk
dangerous
about
than any clicker.
listen to Alex Jones talk about eating his neighbor for his children.
I'm very lying.
I'm sorry, not his just
I'll go
not
you
his
and I'll
children,
barbecue you. I'm not letting my daughter starve.
just his daughter. That was my favorite part. Forget his son.
What about your son, AJ?
Or the offhand comment that Ryan Reynolds made about his mother-in-law being at the house.
Don't remember that one.
That too.
If things get really bad, she'll be the first one to eat.
I love that man.
Okay.
Yeah, he's great.
But other than what we've discussed, like, is there anything that's kind of simple?
Does disk drive matter to you guys?
Disk space or disk drive? Like,
Disk drives.
I mean, SSD all the way for 100%. I mean, for the reasons
wait,
they've
are you talking
they've
about
listed.
permanent storage? Or are you talking about like taking Blu-ray discs? Or
We know that
whatever,
we
like,
have
just-
solid states with these. I'm talking about the disk drives. Are you like pretty much done with like caring about having discs at this point,
Yes.
or do you just want to go all digital?
As
Yes.
Mark is a PC gamer, of course he is.
Yes. I would prefer like if so we've had the conversation here 1,000 times about the idea that you don't own the games that you purchase.
Yes.
Because you have to download them from the service, and the problem is if you lose access or are banned from that service, you lose access to every game that you've purchased from that service.
I want to reiterate what you're saying because the problem isn't necessarily the service. The problem is the terms of service to
Right.
those services.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would prefer to see almost a shift in that medium because actually
I
I
also
really
wore
thought
that
that
shirt.
this was going to happen for a long time, but it never did. But you know, like we've shifted mediums from time to time. Like we went from in gaming anyway, we've gone from cartridges to discs, and realistically, that's kind of been the only shift that's really had as far as the medium in which you get your games, other than the internet. I really thought USB.
I mean,
drives
there's
were going to be
obviously
the
we've
next-
seen a. Oh man, that was glitched. My bad. It looked like you just stopped talking. It was a perfect break, and then all of a sudden you came back talking, and I was like, "Whoa!"
This is why you don't go all digital. This is why.
Sorry,
But I thought USB drives were going to be the replacement for that. USB drives you can get in any size, hundreds of gigabytes if you really want to fit an entire game in there, and still have the ability to be offline and plug in and play if you really wanted to without having to or without requiring yourself to be online.
actually, that would have been great.
Because I mean, think about it. Like offline games, you know, like if you're playing, let's say God of War or something like that, and you don't really need the updates, or you don't need the to download it, or don't want to download it, the ability to purchase a flash drive with the entire game on it, like it's basically the replacement for a cartridge, and you could still use the USB ports on the console for other things if you're not using it for a game. Where's the downside there? You know, I think that was something I really missed or saw coming but didn't happen, kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
I
like,
wish it did. It was
disk
cool to
drives-
have like a
disk
whole
drives-
giant ring of games.
Disk drives, in my opinion, can go because discs in and of themselves don't carry a ton of data. Blu-ray discs like only carry up to I think it's like 10 gigs of data, which for a game is a drop in the bucket by comparison to a lot of stuff that's out there now.
It's all
It's a-
100 gigs now.
Right.
It's interesting because I would have said for a long time that I disagree with you, Mark. Mostly because I'm a collector and I can't really turn my laptop camera here. But over here on my left, I have legitimately 6 different consoles, about 7 handhelds,
You
and
spent
then
a
my
lot of money.
collection. My collection of video games that I have. That is a point of pride to me. It is something, it's like a library. Like when you walk into somebody's area where they have a bookshelf, I love looking at a bookshelf. I love looking at a DVD rack. It tells a lot about a person. And it's interesting to see what that person views as important enough to buy, even if it's only $3, $5, whatever. They still thought enough to buy that off-brand DVD collection of Die Hard films that includes the first 4, but not the 5th one. Like, it's interesting. So I want that I want that to stay the same. However, it's not practical. It just isn't anymore. You know, companies are no longer really releasing the little pamphlets you'd find in game, like the manuals.
I
right?
miss those so much.
Yeah, like when they got rid of that, it really is just a box with a disc in it, or in Nintendo's case, a cartridge.
But at the same time, if you wanted to play that game and not be subjugated to the same terms and services digital, then you won't be.
And we lost John.
And that's
He's
Yeah,
just-
we
where
lost
the
him.
only
I
real
know he's still
difference is,
recording.
like,
So as far
how
as
are
you guys are seeing, everything's back to normal. Oh, hey, there he is. Look at that. He's
Oh,
back.
hey. Wow, man.
You
were
froze
like
so
super pensive.
hard.
And I was like, yeah, you're listening to me for some reason really hard.
Anyway, what were you saying?
The point of me wanting to stay with disc as much as possible was really because of the Digital Millennium Act and how a lot of companies are and have proven, especially during this crisis, particularly the pandemic, on how ruthless they can be. And, say they're just like, oh, we're actually going to change our company's name, and so we're dropping the other one. So all of your digital games are going to be dropped out, and you're going to have to get them on this if you want it. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Right.
And I'm just super worried that one day they're going to drop the hammer and be like...
It's unfortunate because there's not a whole lot that can be done about that, in the sense of, like...
There can. Don't buy digital, but that's not going to happen.
True. But here's the
option.
problem. Yeah, it's the convenience. I mean, we've seen it with the music industry, and I am one of the biggest holdouts for this. But I refuse to buy a subscription to Amazon Music, Apple Music, or Spotify. I refuse. Because I would prefer to own the disc myself. I'll burn it on my laptop, and then I'll have the MP3 or MP4 that I can move to whatever medium I have. I can store that in the cloud. I want that. That's what I want. Even if I don't have my discs out on a shelf anymore, they're in a box, actually right over there. But I want to have control of that. You lose that control entirely when you give over to these streaming services for convenience. And the convenience is nice, and it's real nice. But I do agree with you to that extent, John, of that fear.
How can you not fear that? I mean, companies have proven time and time again that they will do stupid shit like that, and I'm just waiting for the hammer to drop. And it's only going to take one person to just ruin that trust. It takes one company. Doesn't have to be PlayStation. Doesn't have to be Xbox.
Yeah, well, it's a very odd situation, because I think the problem is that these companies, and most companies we've seen, are controlled by the masses. They're whatever the mass opinion is what they're going to go with, and that in and of itself just causes issues. And especially when you're concerned about something, or you're afraid of it to go one way or another, you're going to have to work in their boundaries, for better or worse.
Yeah. It's a time that's, eventually going to take over. Well, we said 10% extra per year. I think the coronavirus probably jumped that ahead another year.
Yeah.
It's going to be what it is. It's unfortunate. But also with GameStop dying, that's going to be the nail in the coffin. Hello, digital, just take off like a rocket.
Yeah. Well, again, what was it? It was the average.
Best Buy would be the only one I think that's still left standing.
Best Buy, Walmart, and all that, and they will continue to release this next generation, Gen 5. Most of the big hits will release, but you're going to see all these smaller games die away. There's no reason to, because they're paying. Well, if I'm trying to read, the publisher pays $50.
They lose like 35% of what they would make to go on disc over digital.
It's more than that, because they have to pay for manufacturing costs. They have to pay for the actual distribution, and then GameStop buys, like GameStop, Walmart, all of them. They buy games for $50 and they sell them for $60. So they make a 12% margin? No, it's more than that.
So yeah,
15% margin.
I feel like there's going to be a certain point to where it almost becomes a niche thing, or a high dollar item to own the disc for it. Like,
yes,
you'll still see some modern albums come out on vinyl.
Yeah. So
as an example,
this is where limited run games works incredibly well, is because they do this all the time, where they take games that are either only digital or had a small run to begin with, and they publish hard copies of them.
Right.
And so they've been doing that a lot recently. Yeah, Spelunky had a great collector's edition, and you pay for the markup.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you do.
Well, and you pay for the markup.
But to some extent, that'll be the point. Like, for example, if you want to own a collector's edition of it, where you get, like the physical thing, like
little unboxing while we're doing this.
What's the big example I can think of? Well, I literally any game, I guess, that has a major release. My brain is blanking now. Brent, what you've played the crap out of it. What's the or actually, I guess you were extremely hyped for it. I don't know how much you've actually played on it lately, but
Final Fantasy VII Remake.
No, definitely not. No, I'd have been able to call that one out, because you've been talking about that for the last 8 months. What's the one with Roman Reedus that you've been playing lately? Why can't I think of that?
Oh, Death Stranding.
Yeah, Death Stranding. like Death Stranding's collector's edition came out with like the little the baby module.
The
Yeah,
baby.
but I mean, I feel like in that scenario, you get a disc version of the game to come out. And maybe, Sony releases an add-on thing that you plug in via USB to be able to use your disc if you really want to, or feel that nostalgia, I guess, if you want to.
No, how that would work is that they would give you a collector's edition with the various accoutrements and a digital code.
Well, but I think if they wanted to go to like the vinyl route of like modern songs or modern albums coming out on vinyl,
that's true.
Then they would give you a physical disc, but you'd have to have an adapter to play it, just like you have to have a record player to be able to play the vinyl, that kind of thing.
You best believe this man right here will own that adapter because I love the physical medium.
Mm-hmm. But I think like for example the adapter would probably give you access. Like it may also have the hardware for PS4 or PS3, PS2, that kind of thing, to be able to insert those discs and continue to play all of your old legacy games as well without actually having to add the cost to everyone else who, I'll be honest, the majority of people who probably don't care quite as much.
Well, that's where the smart delivery with Xbox right now is super important because you're going to have a lot of this backwards compatibility with games on the in-between that you're not going to have to worry about getting the upgrade to the new console. I hope PlayStation 5 does the same. We'll find out.
To talk about this a little bit, I think what's important here is it's not just backwards compatibility; it's forwards compatibility.
Yeah.
So if for the people
also
who don't
called
know,
smart delivery
is a term for a service that Xbox is providing, in which if you purchase a game, regardless of what platform it is, whether it's Xbox One or Series X, you have it for both. So that way, if you were somebody who buys a game on Xbox One, like Valhalla, when you purchase your Series X, you would have the upgraded version of that on your Series X ready to go day one, which I think is incredible.
Yeah.
Not only is that incredibly consumer friendly, but it also incentivizes you. It makes sure that you are keeping with, if you are on a budget, you don't have to miss out on the newest games coming out, on the best version of it. Because when you do have the money and you have the time and you can buy that Series X, you'll get the Series X and you can get that game. Now, the big question is, can you transfer over your save?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Because if you can transfer over your save,
Well, that means I don't see why you wouldn't. I think the specs for a while now have been built out to say you have to format it this way for it to be backwards compatible. So they've already, I think,
I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think what Microsoft has done is that they're using their big fat wallet and they're like, "Hey, by the way."
I'm talking about Sony. When they started out the Pro, they said everybody's got to start from this date. Program it this way so that way it can be backwards compatible. I think that was them fixing that, and I hope that PS5 is backwards compatible with the PS4 games up until that point, at least.
Well, and the way Mark Cerny was discussing how backwards compatibility works is that they're not just incorporating the hardware specs and software specs of PS4 to emulate it. Like they're actually making this so that it runs natively PS4 games.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, the hope would be that you could transfer that data over. But we'll find out. We'll find out in the future. I really don't think that's the case. Unfortunately, I think that comes down to...
I think that would be a big ball drop.
I think so too. And I see that for both PlayStation and Microsoft, because let's be honest, they're not really used to having to support this kind of system.
Their saves go through between PC and Xbox, so why wouldn't they make it well-rounded all the way around?
That's not true. That's not true. If you buy a game or you're using the Xbox game, so Game Pass for PC is different than Game Pass for the consoles. You have to pay premium for the PC. It's $15 instead of $10 a month. And as far as I understand it, you do not have the same. The way it works is that
the saves aren't transferable.
So you would have the same save because it's emulating a 360 or it's emulating an Xbox One. But if you were to take your Assassin's Creed Valhalla from Xbox One save and try to use it on Series X, I don't think it'll work because it's technically a different
smart delivery. Why wouldn't they have the ability to do that? You're going to get the game. Why wouldn't you be able to take your transfer with it?
Getting technical anyway, it's up to the game developer really to make that happen.
Yeah,
and
I
whether
agree with
Microsoft
that.
offers the service to be able to pull the saves from both directions. So
Yeah.
I have no idea. I'm
Yeah.
just sort of speculating. Like, as long as the save files come out the same, and for most games they are. Like, the way that save files are saved on Xbox and PlayStation and PC are all the same because the game developer doesn't want to change their format from console to console. It's how they're uploaded to the online formats or the online backups that matter. So I'm not certain whether
Yeah,
or not
it's-
like that's really how.
It's tough because let's be honest here that both Microsoft and Sony have touted the fact that the next generation is supposed to be easier to develop than ever before. They're talking about the fact that it's super conducive to everyone. So that they can make sure that they're learning the process to develop a lot quicker. So it's entirely possible that the file format's the same, in which case, kudos, you're good to go. But it truly depends on whether or not Sony and Microsoft ensure that the way you save games on PS5 and Series X is similar or the same to Xbox One and PlayStation 4.
I mean, the easiest way for them to do that, because every game is different and every developer is different, would be to just say, tell us what folder you want us to save, or zip it up and tell us what file you want us to save, and we'll just store that somewhere and then redistribute it back out, and you download it and unzip it, and you have your own processes to do that. That's the easiest way to do that, because then if, for example, you want to do it on PC, then, I mean, now the developer side of us, Brent, would be, oh, it's a JSON file, oh, it's an XML file, or it's some common format file that you store to the app data folder in Windows, but also is available to Xbox inside the game save folder or whatever for that particular game, that also gets updated or saved back to the cloud, that kind of thing. And PlayStation does exactly the same thing. It's really up to one, the console manufacturers first, and then the game developers how they implement it.
The hope right now is because of the fact that they're discussing, again, like, hey, this is supposed to be easier than anybody has ever had to deal with. The learning curve should be similar, so that, I mean, Mark Cerny specifically pointed out the learning curve for PS4 was a year. The learning curve for PS5 should be 6 months. So with all of that in mind, the hope would be that they have a similar architecture for file storage and all that. But we really won't know until they give us more details, and that's the unfortunate part of it. If they could, that would be incredible. Are you kidding me? If we could go ahead and transfer those saves over from last gen to current gen, that's something that's never been done before on a console. Like that's incredibly.
Oh yeah. Well, so PS3 and Xbox 360 make that a little bit easier because they were already, like, last generation specifically. That makes it easy if you want to move your save over, just because those are already relatively digital. They're all internet enabled devices, that kind of thing. So the file systems and the file structures are all the same. They've been the same for a while now. But you start talking about further back, that's when it becomes an issue. Now, granted, we would have already seen that already. We would have already seen that kind of thing. But.
Wow. But please let us know what you think about the next generation, what you're excited about. Let us know in the comments floating above all of us, because we are all very happy people.
Below.
As I drink this delicious Mexican Cake Westbrook Brew Imperial Stout. 10.5% alcohol.
Too many words.
Oh, God. What's Golden Monkey, do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head now.
But it's above 10. It's like 11 or something like that. It's not far off.
Correct.
There's a golden monkey in Spelunky.
There's a golden monkey. Never mind. Moving on to my topic.
There's a golden monkey in my room.
I want to talk about gaming nostalgia in 2020 because we have had a crazy year. So already this year, they've released the Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 Remastered, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Resident Evil 3. The latter two being reimaginings of the classics. They actually completely reconstructed the game from scratch. Now, Activision may have done the same for Modern Warfare 2 campaign, because it's only the campaign. However, it is a one-for-one retelling of Modern Warfare 2.
It's Infinity Ward and Activision. I wouldn't expect it to be. I'd expect it to be the same assets, just imported to a new engine and be like, adapt. And we're good.
So,
and give me mayonnaise.
I actually wanted
here's a list of
errors.
Go fix those.
I'm going to disagree with that point specifically because what we saw last generation compared to what we're seeing this year is what's fascinating to me. So last gen, PS3 360 era, we saw a lot of porting of older games from the PS2 era up forward. So like the Sony specifically was really bad with this, but like the Sly Cooper collection is Sly Cooper 1 through 3 from PS2 available on PS3. Ratchet and Clank collection 1 through 3 available on PS3. And it was exactly what you're saying, which is we're going to take these assets, we're going to make them look nicer, here's some nicer textures and go. Whereas I would argue the Modern Warfare 2 port is incredible because it is brand new assets built from the ground up in a brand new engine. They just built it like to work exactly like the original. However, we're seeing more and more. We got in the news today, the Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 remakes are coming out, which we don't look amazing. We don't know enough about them yet. However, there's an online mode, so you can play with your friends, compete against them. Yes. It looks like there's an endless mode, which means that there's going to be a seamless transition around. It's not just levels, but you're able to kind of move around a little bit. So that's adding on to the original in a big way. This is definitely not a port of the PS1.
No, looking at it, watch the trailer. It shows you the difference, and it is awesome. Nostalgia band, like just looking at the tables, I was like,
yeah. And then the long rumored Diablo 2 remaster, which we don't know anything about. This is still very much a rumor, but I think we're at an interesting point of gaming nostalgia because we're no longer simply remastering. And I find that very important because if you look at mediums like music, if you look at mediums like television and movies, the Criterion Collection is like a really renowned set of films that they remaster all the time, where they basically clear it up, they put it into 4K format, but because they're not shot in 4K, you can't really get the actual benefits out of it, right? The Casablanca. Casablanca is a world-renowned film, known throughout time, one of my favorites, but there's only so much more they can do with that original movie to make it better. Like, they can't make it... There's only so much more clear it can be. There's only so much they can do with the audio. Video games are a medium where the actual recreation of a game can happen. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing that more and more now, especially this year. I mean, Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I am going to allude to spoilers in the game. So if you have not played the game, mute me for approximately 20 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So the ending of the game rewrites the original, where they completely move away from the actual ending of the original, specifically stating, we are not going to go this route any further. We're going to change it because we're remaking this game in 2020 sensibilities. And I'm going to stop talking about
20 seconds.
But I mean, yeah, we have the technology and the ability to do this. So I was just kind of curious as to what your guys' thoughts are on nostalgia. Does this make video games a very interesting format, or is this kind of betraying the original? I mean, I know plenty of people who are not satisfied with Final Fantasy VII's remake because of the fact that it moves away in a large way, and you don't need to know the ending to know that. It's literally a 30, 40-hour game of the first 4 hours of the original.
Well, to answer your last question, I don't think it is a betrayal or anything like that because it is a remake. This is a different thing that they have built from the same storyline. So I think that some alterations should be accepted. I do think that in this age that we live in, this is the age of nostalgia. We are the generation of nostalgia. Like the people have talked about like this movement that it is with our generation, how we look at the days of Nintendo, and because of the rate of which technology has increased in our lifetime, our rate of nostalgia actually is something that the past generation only got after like 50 years, but ours was within like 15. Yeah. And so we're experiencing multiple levels of nostalgia from childhood to adolescence to adulthood, and we have different variations and levels of nostalgia that are powerful and some not so much and fun and quirky, like we were talking about with Tony Hawk Pro Skater. Whereas you're looking at a game and you get all these fun little vibes of like, man, when I was a happy kid, I cared nothing about the world and I was playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater to the best music that was available today or at that time.
Sitting in my orthodontist office.
And so I totally understand where people are coming from, where, you know, you want the same thing. Like I'm looking at the Tony Hawk Pro Skater video, for instance. I'm looking at the table. Yeah, the color, watching the old school film of them playing the game, I'm like, I'm in it. And then all of a sudden they show the remake, essentially, or I would say the remastered, because it is the same table, but different colors, upresed specs and everything else, so it does look different. You're not going to get the same feeling for it other than if you start incorporating the other stuff, like the music, for instance, and the way you played the game with all the little secret stuff, like, you know, grinding on the helicopter blades to get it to take off and open out the outside so you can go get the videos and stuff like that. Like, that was all the stuff that is going to pull you into that kind of reality. Whereas in some mediums where you look at videos, in my opinion, I think that, or movies, I should say, you know, there's a lot more give and take. I think that people tend to be less impressed by them because, you know, everything, you look at a lot of stuff with rose tinted glasses. Like we talk about Tony Hawk Pro Skater and loved it. Oh my God, it was one of the best games I could think of. It was great. Ocarina of Time, one of my favorite games of all time. You play that now compared to Breath of the Wild or this remaster that's going to come out. It's obviously going to look better. It's going to react better. It's going to have all the different little functions that we like, but it's not going to feel the exact same. And you're never going to get that back. And that's where
fair.
This feeling of nostalgia, like you long for it, but you'll never get it back.
So a completely unrelated question. Are the
Okay.
tapes in the new Pro Skater 1 and 2 still going to be VHS tapes? Are they going to have to become
don't know.
I hope so.
DVDs
They
or something?
better be. They motherfucking better be, because then I hope they have Blockbuster written on the side of them.
Oh, that'd be great.
Just to confuse a younger generation, like my brother.
You don't even
Alex.
know what Blockbuster is.
What is this? I don't even know what this is.
Is that a worse?
Well,
is that like Redbox but older?
I feel like what is super interesting about games is that, you know, it is incredibly expensive to make this stuff. Like, let's not doubt the fact that Activision is putting
absolutely.
money behind Remake of
100%.
1 and 2. You know, Square Enix put literal.
That's
like,
why
a
I'm worried
decade.
about the music.
Well, I mean, with a generational gap like this, for like just using Pro Skater as the example here, you know, like a generational gap like this is gonna have to be obscene. You know, like they're gonna have to rewrite that. Like, there's a reason they call it a remake, because it has to be rewritten from the ground up. There is no carrying assets from one to the other. Basically, you've got a PlayStation set up on one side, you know, playing the old game, and the PS5 sitting off to the other side, where it's like, okay, do these feel the same? Like that, like that's how
Correct.
that's gonna have to go, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
But I also think that's what makes the video game industry scary, for one, right? Because we're seeing movies try to do this over and over again, where they're trying to reboot, remake all these properties.
Fight Club. Have them redo Fight Club. I dare
Please
you.
don't. Please don't.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
I
There's
think
just
that's
some
too
things you
new.
just don't do. But there's other stuff, like what Final Fantasy VII Remake did, that I thought gave more to what they were trying
Correct.
to do.
Yeah.
Which was expanding off of the stuff that you never saw in the original game. Which is not necessarily changing what's going on, but just giving you a little bit more into the story that you never got to begin with.
try to give you a Bandersnatch kind of effect on a classic game you enjoyed.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And games also run this weird. They have this weird dichotomy in the sense of, like, you are playing a game, you are stuck on the platform of choice, right? So there's no way legally, very important, legally, to play a Game Boy game on your PS Vita. There's no way to play a Game Boy game on your Switch.
PC.
Legally. Legally. So when they come up with these recreations, last year is another example too. 2019, we saw the remake of Legend of Zelda. 2019, we saw the remake of A Link to the Past. I mean, this was a faithful retelling with modern sensibilities. You know, I think what's fascinating about the video game industry is that they could continue to churn these out. And I don't mean that in a negative connotation of like just put out remake after remake.
In some ways, it kind of is.
It can't, so last gen, I think we saw that. Again, we're talking about the re-release of here's some slightly updated, textures.
Link's Awakening was very mixed emotions and how people thought, this is exactly the same thing. It's really not much different. But then there's the other side that says the quality of life going between stages, like it felt so good. Like
I can tell you right now, 2 months up to the release of the Switch port, remaster, re-release, whatever you want to call it, I played the original, and my God, it was the Switch just that much nicer. And it wasn't just like it was everything. So they redid the music, so it had an actual orchestra recreating that music, not the MIDI sound, which I don't dislike the MIDI sound, but like when you're in Animal Village and it's like these small pipes and a little bit of the xylophone and like you're like, oh, this is amazing. This is exactly what I want it to be.
But at the same time, when I hear the original Pokemon soundtrack when I turn on my Game Boy, it feels so good. Like so good. Like you can almost not recreate that feeling.
I think you can recreate that feeling in the way that has been handled recently. In like, again, Link's Awakening, that orchestral feeling, you're going to feel that swell of emotion. I'd be surprised if you don't. Like where you're like, oh, this is amazing. I really love this. And there's a new generation of people who will play that game for the first time and go, holy shit, this is really good. I really like this song. This is great. So games are just in a weird space because you don't get this with anything else. Like music, maybe. Like we were talking about before the show.
You have other people who remake music for like, J-Lo does Eminem, whatever.
Or even, that's a weird.
I know, I'm sorry. So 2 names that first came up. I'm sorry. I hope that happens one day.
Where did that come from?
John is really up on the times.
Big butts and that guy.
Eminem. The one rapper he knows and big butts. No, but like we were talking about.
I've been drinking. This is cup 2.
If he'd been a little older, it would have been Madonna. But
there you go. We were discussing before the show how Goldfinger, which is a band that has the song Superman on the original Tony Hawk, has been doing quarantine editions of their own songs, which is essentially them remastering a version. It's a different version of their original song. Like, you get bands doing this all the time. Foo Fighters will go into the studio and they'll re-record Everlong.
It's easy for them to just like replay the same song the same way they've done it, just with new tech, or maybe change something up here or there, change an effect on an electric guitar or whatever. Like it's interesting to see though, because I mean, like definitely like with Goldfinger was definitely I didn't expect that.
Super dope, super cool.
Right.
If you have not seen after this show, you should go.
Yes,
into your
100%.
YouTube search bar.
Drop into the description down below.
If you ever play Tony Hawk Pro Skater, you need to watch that trailer in general. It's so good.
But what I find so interesting is that games actually have the opportunity to recreate themselves and not, in my opinion, not trample on the original. Because this isn't just a simple this isn't recasting.
It's a fine line to
Ghostbusters. It is. And they've done it wrong. I mean, we saw Bionic Commando in Last Generation, which was literally retelling an NES game in a very weird way with like, he's got an arm that shoots out, but it turns out the arm is also his wife. Doesn't make any sense. Bionic Commando is an NES game where like the innovation is there was no jump, so he could swing with a grapple hook. And they took it last gen and they're like, his wife is his mechanical arm to swing around with 3. Makes no sense.
I don't even remember this game.
Correct. So as you can tell from your reactions, there's a bad way to do this.
Yeah.
However, I think that recently we've seen so many good examples. I have such high hopes, and I'm very optimistic about the future because we're seeing so many good iterations. I mean, Capcom alone is revitalizing the Resident Evil franchise off of these remakes. Resident Evil 2 last year, Resident Evil 3 this year. Super positive reviews. Fans are excited. People love it. And a new generation gets to experience it.
Good story direction, good art direction. You know, I mean, it takes someone with vision to really see something like a Final Fantasy VII remake or a RE3 remake to really appeal to not only new people but to the old. Like, it is a very fine line to really weave your way into, and I hope that it looks like Tony Hawk's gonna do it right. Just watching it, I'm like, it feels good. It doesn't feel over the top. It feels like I'm gonna have that same kind of drop in, drop out fun that I'm gonna know and love. So I'm really excited to see what goes on with it.
I agree entirely. I am very optimistic. Mark, do you have any final notes?
No, I'm interested to see. I'm interested to see the nostalgia side of things. I don't know. Like a piece of me is actually more interested to play the Modern Warfare 2 remastered version now. Just because I absolutely loved that game.
Modern Warfare 2 is probably my favorite Call of Duty game of all time.
There you go, boys.
But
time to squat up.
But I mean, it's definitely something to. I think if you have any inkling to play nostalgic games, that kind of thing is to definitely pay attention to the nostalgia that's out there, that kind of thing. Especially if you're like Brent and John, who have played a lot over their careers as gamers. I'll call it. But
you're old men.
But you'll enjoy going back to see some of that stuff and go back to see the remastered remakes, that kind of thing.
Look at this gray.
I know. Every time I see one, I'm like, get out of here! Get here!
Oh, really? I want the salt and pepper look. I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, you mean
salt
both,
and pepper.
my friend. Not because I have red hair, and it doesn't. The salt and pepper don't work with me. It's more like paprika and salt.
There's no gray under here. From here down, there's no possibility of gray. So.
Or hair.
Before we end this section, should we discuss doing a salt and pepper tribute band?
What? No.
No.
Please let us know what you think about video game nostalgia in 2020 in the comments floating above me.
Hello!
Like a very sad cloud. A sad cloud. I'm very sad that we're not going to do this. However, I think it's finally time for last call.
Last call!
Wow, we did that on point this time, boys. I'm so happy about it.
On my perspective, it was early as hell.
You were late in my perspective. God, this is awful. We just have to literally get together and make a audio recording for that with the bell.
No.
Dude, I like the struggle. The struggle
This is so much more fun.
Really?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Because it's so much more fun when Brent tries to trip you up with the important shit at the beginning, even in person, and he does it even harder whenever we're remote. I love it.
Important shit's different.
So of course we're all separate for our quarantine edition, part 12. I don't know what edition it is. Part
What
55.
is it?
I don't know. I'll get a counter somewhere.
I mentioned it earlier. I'm drinking this Westbrook Brewing Company Imperial Stout. It is their Mexican cake stout. It is very delicious. It's slightly spicy on the back end.
Really?
10.5%
That's the
alcohol.
Mexican part.
And I'm also sipping on a little bit of Jameson because, I don't know if you know this, it's very common in Ireland for old men to drink a pint of Guinness and sip a shot of Jameson. So I'm doing both.
I was wondering why you had a shot earlier. Now, granted, you've had shots for the last, I think, 5 episodes that we've had.
My shots are just bigger.
Let's see. I guess I'm having a gallon of Woodford.
Half gallon gone.
This is how much I've drank it. No, I'm kidding. I'm having some good old Woodford Reserve. I've got the girlfriend and I took a trip to the liquor store and bought up a good supply to last us a good while. Anyway, this is my go-to during the quarantine.
Very nice.
So
It's a good go-to.
yeah, no,
I need to go
I
get some of that, actually.
I enjoyed it. It was actually on sale for a good while. The Double Oak was also on sale, which actually I wasn't a big fan of the Double Oak because it was a lot more peaty than I anticipated. But
Yeah, and the last time we had it, it wasn't as good as the regular actually Woodford, which was kind of disappointing.
yeah.
Yeah.
But a standard Woodford, definitely has become one of my go-tos. Right behind Jameson, actually, come to think of it.
Oh, so good.
Buddy, this bad boy.
How many bottles is that?
5.
You have to go to the liquor store now?
Yep.
That's good.
Well, no, technically not, because I still have 3 bottles of rum.
Next week, I may bring in my mojito because I have a mint plant that's growing like crazy.
Ooh.
Sounds like a good time.
Moving on to our weekly deals. I have no weekly reading this week. Of course, you can always join our Discord because we love to have conversations. There are people popping off in there. It's almost like if there's isolation involved, people want to talk. Who'd have thought? Very odd. Okay. I don't like
Desk Pop? You okay? This is Desk Pop?
There's no such thing as a desk pop.
They were so convincing.
September. Oh wait. Moving on to our weekly deals. It looks like Marvel Comics is giving away free comics. So this is actually really interesting because they are giving away some very specific comics. It's not the entirety of a collection. It's honestly more to drive you into it. However, there's some really, really good ones. So The Amazing Spider-Man Masterworks, which is a collection of various comics of Spider-Man throughout the decades. So that includes The Amazing Spider-Man from 1963, 1 through 10, and Amazing Fantasy number 15, which is the first instance of Spider-Man appearing. There is the Doctor Strange Volume 1, which I can attest to is a very, very good comic. This is Doctor Strange in the modern age. It was released shortly after the film, and it talks about him handling basically magic and the cost of magic, which is not really handled in the MCU all that well. It's a very fascinating look. Hulk, Planet Hulk, is one of the most iconic Hulk comics of all time. So if you don't read that, you straight crazy.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Secret Wars. Secret Wars is a very, very good comic that was recently released in around 2015. It involves Doctor Doom taking over the entire Marvel Universe. So that's just a little bit of it. There's many, many more. Again, they're free. You have to have a Comixology subscription, but other than that, they go into your bin. They're available. You can read them at any time. I highly recommend looking into that.
Cool. How much is a Comixology subscription?
So this actually doesn't require a subscription, just an account. An account is free.
Okay, so there you go.
Humble Bundle also has a Play Together digital board games bundle. This bundle is still available. It is available for the next 2 days.
Oh, that reminds me.
I'm actually interested in
4
this
days.
because, like, some of us
4
were
days.
the girlfriend and I, and some of our friends and my friends were talking about doing some tabletop games. This would be kind of cool.
So these are digital tabletop games. They are definitely not what you would expect. However, the total cost is $12 to unlock. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. About 12 games. There's one game called Splendor, which has a plethora of expansions. You have access to all of them. Mysterium, I've heard so many good things about that. It's like a murder mystery involving psychics. There's, of course, Scythe. Scythe is really, really cool. There's a famous digital artist who has done the artwork for Scythe. So $12, you have at least 12 games accessed off of this, and you can play with your friends. All available through Steam. I don't think there's any other way to do it. So you can do Steam through your Mac or through Linux. So whatever your preference is, you have access to it.
That
Very
Walking
exciting.
Dead
I feel like
set's
Mac and
still
Linux are
available,
still
too.
through Steam.
Yeah, probably. For some cool ass shit. Of course, we were talking about the Goldfinger Quarantine Editions. I linked to the Superman video, which will give you access to all of their other videos, but they've done 99 Red Balloons along with other songs. It's actually really, really cool.
99
Really well done. Schlecht balloons. It looks like the Mario Brothers Masters have set a new arcade record amid quarantine. There's a wonderful Kotaku article about that. And then a father creates a Little Big Planet level with his daughters for Mother's Day in place of a Mother's Day card. So I found this on Twitter. It's very cute. It's very fun. Look at the video. It's fun. Finally, our question of the week is, what is a traditionally major industry or institution that you do not participate in? And this is a very rough question, so I'm going to go ahead and answer first. a traditionally major industry or institution that I do not participate in is the diamond industry. For one, it helps that my wife has no interest in diamonds, but two, there's really no desire for me to spend money on these stones that arguably history has arbitrarily made.
They're better tools than they
Expensive.
are jewelry.
Correct. Yeah. So the idea of buying a bunch of diamond jewelry has never appealed to me. I don't wear a whole lot of jewelry. I have a wedding ring. I used to wear a couple of other rings that did not have any gemstones in them whatsoever, minus my class ring from high school. I've never been somebody who wants to do those things.
Yeah.
I feel they're very flashy and what's the word? Not selfish, but it's just vain in my opinion. And I am not
It's
casting.
not even really about vain. It's about like there's no real value in it. Like
Yeah,
it's someone has convinced others that there is value in it, and in reality,
Beers.
there's not.
Correct. Yeah, and I definitely think
Beers.
Being honest. De Beers.
doubles, the beers, doubles.
Sorry, it was a bad joke.
Watching a couple of videos on how the engagement ring came to be in the 1920s, I was like, yeah, no, I'm done with this. I
Thank
don't
you,
care.
Adams ruins everything.
Not
Yes.
even weddings. Weddings weren't even really a thing until fairly recently. Like it was only meant for like royals, and that was just a status thing. And then it became a status thing, and now it's like every day. And then people go like into debt for weddings, and which is actually, you know, I mean, I'm not married or anything, so I guess I'm not a part of that institution. But it's hard to not be a part of something. But I'm totally with you. The diamond industry, I have no interest in being a part of. It serves no value to me, nor to the person that I even love, or would choose to be with. And also weddings in general, the big weddings, the, you know, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $100,000 weddings, like, it makes no sense to me. Like, having a small gathering of people that I love, and I'll just have Mikey be my reverend again, like he was with yours, and I'll be happy.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason why we had our wedding as big as it was, honestly, was because of my father and his wife, which I don't disagree with. I loved my wedding. It was a fantastic time. We had a good time. It was beautiful. Like, but I would have never have had it that big had I not had the connections, is what it comes down to. Because I wouldn't spend the money on that kind of thing.
Yeah.
What about you, Marcus?
It's a hard question, man. I feel you.
It is.
Yeah.
I'm having a harder time with this because I've come up with a couple anyway that I usually like divert from other people, I guess, in a lot of that respect.
I'll put a second one in. PCs. PC gaming. Not a part of that.
Got him.
Well, then I guess I could say console industry.
Oh!
I haven't owned a console since the PS2. And I didn't buy it. My dad did. Actually, no. I'm sorry. I take it back. The 360. The 360. And I still didn't buy that one. My father did.
Now we're rolling back.
All I know is I didn't buy a 360. I just bought the hard drive. It was the best thing they ever did for me. I'll tell you that.
No, I don't know. I guess the like I'd agree with you with the diamond industry. The diamond industry is definitely something I don't agree with because it's something that's out of the ordinary. The problem is that, well, you know, if we're going to talk relationships, is there are some relationships that you're in that you just can't avoid that with, and some that you can talk your way through on that one, and that's not really a problem, you know, and I don't know. That's a harder pick to be in sometimes because it's not necessarily your decision as the male.
You're not
sometimes.
wrong there. Yeah, it depends on the traditionalist.
Right. Exactly. Sure. Well, traditionalist, quote unquote. It depends on how traditional they're talking. And
I'd rather use that money
as
as a down payment on a house.
The only other one that I had really, I guess, convinced myself, I guess, as part of the as not part of the industry is education.
Okay.
And now I'm a little biased in that concern because to some extent I've spent quite a bit on education or higher level education anyway. But I don't own a bachelor's degree in anything relative to what I do.
Hack.
So I have a. I've talked about this before.
This is our technology expert. Would you calm down?
So I don't have a degree or a formal degree in anything technological related. I have an associate's degree in general education, an associate's degree in air traffic control, of all specific things to get. But I don't have anything in computer science, even though I am a developer professionally.
Yeah.
Goes
even though
to
I'm
show
a developer
you, anybody
on the
can
side,
do it, guys. Just hop on a computer, get on Facebook, and start typing stuff.
On Facebook. Exactly.
Right,
Directly on
exactly.
Facebook. As your status. As your status, you should.
Ironically, MySpace is where I got my start. But
Oh, man.
HTML.
HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Yeah, that was it. But like education's just not something I guess I have a formal interest in. Like, you know, I've had people ask me, well, are you going to go back to school for computer science and get a degree? No, I don't have any interest in doing that. Like I didn't have any interest in the education industry as it was. Aside from like particular topics that I was very, very interested in. Ironically, I was not interested in learning about technology so much as doing the programming. So it was an odd position for me, I guess, you know, of like I didn't want to be there, but I wanted to do what they wanted me to do, but I needed the degree, but I didn't want to have the degree and that kind of thing. So it was something I didn't want to participate in. So to some extent I didn't, even though like I started in it and dropped
I think
out
you're
and came back and that kind of thing.
Your ideology here is fair to say, in the sense of like you pursued something that you had interest in and that you desired to be a part of, but you didn't require the actual education for that justification, if that makes any sense, right?
Yeah.
Like you went out, you found it on your own, and you didn't see a desire or a necessity to go to a school. And I think that's completely fine. I actually think that's a great lesson for a lot of people.
Now,
You know,
for those people in that are probably going through there or maybe watching this thinking, oh, that is my lesson. It is very hard.
it is, yes.
It's taken a long time, a lot of work and everything to prove myself in that respect, as opposed to having the education on the other side where it is
correct.
That degree is the proof.
And arguably what helped you quite a bit was having the in. Not to say that the in is what got you through to where you are today, but the in is what got your start.
I'll say that to some extent. The
in
did get me there, but it would have been a lot harder to prove myself if I didn't have it.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. I mean, you needed someone to help back you to get your first job, and then after you proved yourself, you were able to pursue your career as you have.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So I agree entirely. Yeah. That's very. I always, I'm going to make you blush here, but I've always admired the fact that you have not gone through this kind of professional training, gone through the same hoops that I have, because we are in the same industry, and
it shows it shows true talent. Like whereas like in like your true interest to where you went, like I mean I have a psychology and a biology degree. Like, yeah, I could do all these things if I wanted to, but it's not really like.
John, I'll be honest, I didn't know about that about you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I could read your mind. I know all of your perverted things before you even told me.
Exactly.
Oh, well, that explains why you're a lot more fucked up than I am then.
It's why I actually was curious. I was like, how bad am I?
No, but I think you are absolute living proof that we have an industry in education that is not necessary. If you're passionate and driven enough that you can easily pursue whatever career you want, and there's no, I don't want to say shame, because I'm not trying to shame you, but like legitimately, you should do what you want and whatever makes you happy. So
you could be a trained airline pilot who doesn't need to have a wedding, but you can go to a courthouse and you can put a freaking whatever band you want to. It doesn't have to be a diamond, and there you go. That's all of us wrapped up in a basket.
I will say your limitation is federal restrictions, but that's a different issue. You can be a great
go to a
pilot,
court.
but without a license, you literally cannot fly a plane. That's beside the point.
Okay. But I would love to
Or
hear
you can be Harrison
your own
Ford and not
thoughts.
be a good pilot, but still have a license.
I would love to hear your own thoughts. Get off my plane.
Get off my
In the
plane.
comments below
Such a good
Alone.
about what major industries that you
Try
do
to
not,
remake
or
that movie.
institutions that you do not participate in the comments.
Con
floating
Air, not happening.
to the left of me, because that's where Handsome John is, and it's like covering him up right now. It's really weird. But until
For
next
your
time,
perspective.
cheers.
Cheers.
I'm empty. Cheers.